An abandoned underground bunker sealed for decades. Classified documents exposing government secrets from the Cold War. One desperate single mother's last-ditch $500 investment before losing everything she had left. This is the extraordinary, true story of how Olivia Parker's impulsive purchase of a dilapidated ranch revealed a hidden, military installation that would forever change her family's destiny and uncover a chapter of American history some powerful people wanted to remain buried. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The alarm blared at 4:30 a.m., though Olivia Parker had already been awake for hours, staring at the ceiling of her cramped apartment, mentally calculating how many more days she could keep a roof over her children's heads. At 38, the single mother of 3 showed every sign of the brutal past 2 years: the unexpected death of her husband from an undiagnosed heart condition, the crushing medical debt that followed, and the foreclosure on their modest suburban home when the insurance company denied their claim on a technicality. Morning light crept through thin curtains as Olivia scrolled through another string of job rejection emails on her phone. Despite 15 years of experience in communications and public relations, she'd been unable to secure stable employment in the small town of Pinewood Valley. The few interviews she'd managed to land always ended the same way: a polite email explaining they'd gone with someone whose current experience better aligned with their needs. Meaning someone younger and cheaper, Olivia muttered to herself, setting the phone down and running her hands through her unwashed hair. The small 2-bedroom apartment they now called home had been meant as a 6-week stopgap after selling their house. That was 9 months ago. The landlord had made it clear there would be no more extensions on their month-to-month lease. 21 days remained before they needed to be out, with nowhere else to go. Olivia glanced at the family photo on her nightstand. Her husband Michael's easy smile, 12-year-old Zoe's braces, 9-year-old Tyler's missing front tooth, and little Abby, now 5, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. The photo had been taken just 3 months before Michael collapsed in their driveway while washing the car. Just 3 months before everything fell apart. 3 weeks, she whispered to herself. 21 days to figure this out. She pulled herself from bed and shuffled to the kitchen, careful not to wake the children who were still asleep in their shared bedroom. The coffee maker, one of the few appliances she'd kept from their old life, gurgled to life as she spread out papers across the small kitchen table. Rental listings for apartments she couldn't afford, job applications that had gone unanswered, and past due notices from creditors demanding payments she couldn't make. At the center of this depressing collage sat a printout she'd been studying obsessively since yesterday: a foreclosure notice for an abandoned ranch property being auctioned by Western Savings Bank. The starting bid was just $500, an almost unbelievably low price that reflected both the property's remote location 40 miles outside town and its severely dilapidated condition. According to the listing, the 15-acre ranch had been abandoned for decades, the main house virtually uninhabitable without major renovation. The auction was clearly designed for developers or investors looking to acquire land cheaply, not for someone seeking an actual home. Yet something about the listing had captured Olivia's attention and wouldn't let go. "Mom?" Zoe's voice came from the hallway. The 12-year-old stood there in oversized pajamas, her long brown hair tangled from sleep, but her eyes alert and concerned. At some point over the past 2 years, Zoe had been forced to grow up too quickly, becoming attuned to their precarious situation in ways no child should have to be. "More job applications?" she asked, glancing at the papers strewn across the table. "Just exploring options," Olivia replied, discreetly sliding the foreclosure notice beneath a stack of bills. There was no need to share her desperate consideration of betting their last $1,200 in savings on an abandoned ranch that could either save them or become their final financial mistake. As Zoe helped prepare breakfast for her younger siblings, Olivia's phone chimed with a text from her brother Ryan. "Mom said you can all stay with her until you get back on your feet. Don't be stubborn about this, Liv." Olivia sighed. Living with her mother would mean moving 3 hours away to Sacramento, changing the kids' schools yet again, and admitting complete defeat. The thought of cramming her 3 children into her mother's one-bedroom condo with its cigarette smoke-saturated furniture made her stomach turn. Not to mention the constant reminders of how she should have married better or chosen a more practical career. No, she couldn't do that to her kids. Not yet, not without exhausting every other possibility. First, after getting the children off to school, Olivia sat at her laptop, updating her resume for what felt like the 100th time. She'd once managed communications for several successful regional businesses, coordinating marketing campaigns and public relations strategies that had generated millions in revenue. Now, with nearly 2 years of unemployment creating a glaring gap in her work history, even entry-level positions seemed out of reach. Olivia clicked through to her bank account. $1,247.63 remaining from cashing out her retirement account early despite the penalties after Michael's death. She'd been ruthlessly frugal, but without income, the balance only moved in one direction. Another month of rent would leave them with barely $200 to their name. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Her eyes drifted back to the foreclosure listing. The Patterson Ranch, named after its original owners who had established it in the 1940s, 15 acres of scrubby desert land with a dilapidated 3-bedroom ranch house, a collapsed barn, and, according to the listing, various outbuildings in extreme disrepair. The minimum bid of $500 was less than half of her remaining savings. In better times, she might have seen it as an interesting investment opportunity. In her current situation, it seemed like a desperate gamble with the last of their resources. Olivia had never considered herself impulsive. Before Michael's death, she'd been meticulous with finances, maintaining an emergency fund, contributing to retirement accounts, researching investments carefully. But circumstances had stripped away those securities one by one, leaving her with dwindling options and a growing sense of desperation. At noon, Olivia drove to yet another job interview, this time for an administrative assistant position at a local real estate office, a role she was significantly overqualified for, but had applied to anyway. On impulse, she took a detour to drive past the Patterson Ranch property. 40 minutes outside of Pinewood Valley, the landscape transformed from pine forests to arid desert scrubland. A rusted metal gate hung askew from a single hinge, the faded "No Trespassing" sign barely legible after decades of sun exposure. Beyond it, a dirt road wound through scattered mesquite trees toward what had once been the main house. Olivia parked at the gate, not wanting to trespass, but straining to see the property from the road. The ranch house was visible in the distance, a low-slung structure with a sagging roof, broken windows, and weathered wood siding that had long ago lost any protective coating. Around it stood several smaller structures in various states of collapse, including what appeared to be an old water tower and some kind of concrete block building partially buried in earthen berm. Despite its obvious state of abandonment, there was something compelling about the property. Perhaps it was simply the vast openness of the land, the distant mountains forming a dramatic backdrop, or maybe just the desperate hope that in this remote location, $500 might actually buy them a chance at a fresh start. As Olivia contemplated the ranch, her phone rang, the hiring manager from her morning interview. "Miss Parker, I appreciate you coming in today, but we've decided to go with a candidate whose experience more closely matches our current needs." The rejection was politely worded, but devastating nonetheless. The fourth such call this month. Olivia ended the call and stared out at the abandoned ranch, a wild idea taking shape. The auction was tomorrow. Her savings would cover the minimum bid with enough left over for some immediate repairs and supplies. It was reckless, possibly even foolish. The reasonable voice in her head listed all the problems, the likely extensive renovation costs, remote location meaning long commutes to school and work, the possibility of structural issues that could make the property not just unlivable but dangerous. Yet something about the property called to her. Perhaps it was the independence it represented, a place of their own where no landlord could evict them, where the children would have space to play, where they might be able to start over without the constant pressure of monthly rent hanging over their heads. Olivia arrived at her afternoon interview distracted, her thoughts repeatedly returning to the Patterson Ranch. The interviewer asked standard questions about her 5-year career goals, and Olivia provided practiced answers, while mentally calculating how much it might cost to replace broken windows and repair a leaking roof. That evening, after tucking the children into bed, Olivia researched everything she could find about the property. The Patterson Ranch had been established in 1947 by William and Eleanor Patterson, who had raised cattle there until the mid-1960s. After William's death, Eleanor had apparently sold the property to the federal government for an undisclosed purpose. Though she continued to live in the main house until her death in 1978, the property had then sat vacant for decades, eventually being transferred to the county for unpaid taxes before being acquired by Western Savings Bank through a complicated series of transactions. According to local newspaper archives, there had been periodic interest in developing the land for various purposes over the years, but nothing had ever materialized. What caught Olivia's attention, however, was a small mention in a 1967 article about the government acquisition, referring to the property's strategic location and subsurface structural advantages that made it ideally suited for specialized communications purposes during times of national emergency. Communications purposes, Olivia muttered to herself. What does that even mean? The auction disclosure documents were frustratingly vague, mentioning potential subsurface structures not fully documented, and possible environmental considerations related to prior government usage. These cryptic warnings should have deterred her, but instead only piqued her curiosity further. "This is insane," she whispered, closing her laptop around midnight. Yet as she drifted towards sleep, Olivia found herself picturing her children running across those 15 acres, having rooms of their own again, and perhaps, if they were very lucky, turning a dilapidated ranch into a home and an eventual asset, rather than just finding another temporary shelter. The next morning, after dropping the children at school with extra tight hugs and promises of a surprise later, Olivia drove to the county courthouse where the auction would take place. She had no experience with property auctions, had done none of the proper inspections, and was operating purely on instinct, something the old Olivia would never have done. 7 people gathered in the small auction room, 2 contractors looking for flip opportunities, a representative from a development company interested in the land value, a man in a suit who appeared to be bidding by phone for an unnamed client, and Olivia, clutching her checkbook with sweaty palms and a racing heart. When bidding opened at $500, Olivia raised her number immediately. To her surprise, only the man in the suit countered. With each increase, Olivia's anxiety grew, but she continued, finally offering $750, over half of everything she had left in the world. After a tense silence, the auctioneer's gavel fell. Sold to bidder number 5. Within hours, Olivia had completed the paperwork, written the check that represented her family's last financial reserves, and received a set of keys to a property she had never even entered. By afternoon, she was legally the owner of the Patterson Ranch, either her family's salvation or their final financial undoing. What Olivia Parker couldn't possibly know as she drove to pick up her children from school, uncertain how to explain her impulsive purchase, was that beneath the dilapidated ranch house lay a fully equipped Cold War-era government bunker, sealed. For decades. Hidden inside were classified documents and technology that would connect this remote desert property to one of America's most secretive military programs and a covert operation that powerful people in Washington still wanted to keep buried. Olivia Parker stood at the rusted gate of the Patterson Ranch, keys clutched in her hand, wondering if she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, highlighting the property's neglect more starkly than she remembered from her drive-by the previous day. The sagging roofline, broken windows, and what appeared to be some kind of animal den beneath the front porch all served as immediate evidence that her $750 gamble might have been catastrophically unwise. "Mom, is this really ours?" Zoe asked, her expression a mixture of horror and fascination as she stood beside her mother, school backpack still slung over her shoulder. Olivia had picked up all 3 children directly after the auction, unable to delay sharing the news of their dramatic change in circumstances. "It is," Olivia confirmed, trying to inject confidence into her voice. "It needs work, obviously. But think of the space we'll have compared to the apartment." 5-year-old Abby had already slipped through the gate and was spinning in circles in the dusty front yard, her natural exuberance undiminished by the property's condition. 9-year-old Tyler had made a beeline for the collapsed barn, poking at the weathered wood with a stick he'd found. "It's like one of those abandoned places they explore on YouTube," he exclaimed with the unfiltered enthusiasm only a young boy could muster for such dilapidation. "Do you think there's treasure buried somewhere?" "No treasure," Olivia assured him, though in truth, the property's mysterious government history did make her wonder what might be hidden beneath the surface. "Just a lot of hard work ahead of us." Olivia pushed open the gate, its hinges protesting with a screech that echoed across the empty landscape. The dirt driveway stretched about 100 yards to the main house, with several smaller structures scattered around the property. Besides the collapsed barn, there was a concrete pump house near what must have been a well, the toppled water tower, and the strange concrete block building partially built into a small hill. The ranch house itself was a single-story structure, built in the simple functional style of the 1940s. Its wooden siding had once been painted white but was now a weathered gray, with patches missing entirely. The front porch sagged dangerously on one side, and several windows were either broken or boarded over. Olivia tested each step carefully as she climbed onto the porch, the wooden boards creaking ominously beneath her weight. The front door, once painted a cheerful red according to traces that remained, now hung slightly askew on corroded hinges. It took several attempts with different keys before the lock finally turned with a rusty groan. The door swung inward, releasing a cloud of dust and the musty scent of long abandonment. Olivia fumbled for her phone's flashlight, illuminating a modest living room with a stone fireplace. Peeling wallpaper hung in strips from the walls, and what remained of the furniture was either broken or covered in animal droppings. "It's actually bigger than I expected," Zoe admitted, her initial skepticism giving way to cautious exploration as she stepped inside. Over the next hour, the Parker family conducted a careful inspection of the house. Despite obvious water damage in several areas and evidence of various creatures having taken up residence over the years, the structure itself appeared surprisingly solid. The 3 bedrooms were spacious. The kitchen still contained an ancient cast-iron stove that might be salvageable, and the stone fireplace seemed intact. "The electricity's been disconnected," Olivia noted, testing a light switch without result. "And I'm not touching any faucets until we have a plumber check the pipes. We'll need to stay at the apartment tonight and for the next few days at least." "Aw, Mom," Tyler protested, already imagining camping adventures in their dilapidated ranch house. "Non-negotiable," Olivia replied firmly. This place isn't safe yet. We need to make sure there's clean water, working electricity, and no structural dangers before we can stay here. As the children continued exploring under strict instructions to avoid any areas with visible floor damage, Olivia pulled out a notebook and began listing immediate priorities: utilities, roof inspection, plumbing assessment, pest control. Each item represented money she no longer had, but perhaps some work could be done gradually, room by room, allowing them to occupy parts of the house while renovating others. Olivia was calculating potential costs when Tyler's voice called from outside. "Mom, come look at this weird building." Olivia followed his voice to the concrete structure she'd noticed earlier, partially built into a small hill about 50 yards behind the house. Up close, it was clearly more substantial than it had appeared from a distance, a windowless block building with a heavy metal door set into concrete. The door was secured with a large padlock that appeared newer than the rest of the structure. "What is it?" Tyler asked, running his hands over the rough concrete surface. "I'm not sure," Olivia admitted. "Maybe some kind of storm shelter or storage bunker." The disclosure mentioned subsurface structures. She examined the padlock more closely. Unlike the rusted gate and decaying house, this lock appeared to be relatively new, perhaps installed within the last few years. None of the keys she'd received at closing seemed like they would fit. "Can we break it open?" Tyler asked eagerly. "Absolutely not," Olivia replied. "We don't know what's in there or if it's structurally sound. This is off limits until we can get someone qualified to look at it." A sharp knocking from the direction of the house interrupted their exploration. Olivia tensed, suddenly aware. They were miles from the nearest neighbor. The property was legally hers, but they hadn't officially closed with the bank yet, which would take another week according to the paperwork. She approached the front of the house cautiously, finding an older man standing on the dirt driveway next to a battered pickup truck. "Thought I saw someone finally taking an interest in this old place," the man said, smiling warmly beneath a weathered cowboy hat. "I'm Roy Hutchins, own the cattle ranch about 3 miles east of here. Saw your car and thought I'd come introduce myself." The unexpected neighborly gesture caught Olivia off guard. "Thank you, I'm Olivia Parker. These are my children, Zoe, Tyler, and Abby. I just bought the property at auction today." Roy Hutchins looked genuinely surprised. "Well, I'll be. Didn't think anyone would actually buy this place, given its history. Bank's been trying to offload it for years." "Its history?" Olivia asked, her curiosity piqued. "Oh, the government business back in the 60s, Roy explained. Used to be a normal ranch until the feds showed up with their trucks and equipment. They were here for a good year, bringing in all kinds of materials, working day and night. Then, one day, they were just gone, leaving old Eleanor Patterson living in the house like nothing ever happened." Olivia glanced toward the concrete bunker. "Would you know anything about that structure back there?" Roy's expression grew more serious. "That'd be the entrance to whatever they built underground. Eleanor would never talk about it. I suspect she signed some kind of confidentiality agreement. All sorts of rumors flew around back then. Communications bunker, missile silo, secret laboratory. Take your pick." The implications of Roy's casual revelation stunned Olivia. She hadn't just purchased a dilapidated ranch house, she'd apparently bought property with some kind of government installation buried beneath it. "Is it safe?" she asked, glancing toward her children who were listening with wide-eyed fascination. "Far as I know," Roy shrugged. "Been sealed up tight since the late 70s when Eleanor passed. County inspectors came out a few times over the years, but whatever's down there, they decided to just leave it alone. I reckon if it was anything truly dangerous, they'd have done something about it by now." Roy offered to help with immediate repairs, connecting Olivia with local tradespeople who might work affordably, and promised to check in on them regularly given their remote location. His unexpected kindness brought Olivia close to tears after months of struggling alone. After exchanging phone numbers, Roy prepared to leave but paused before getting into his truck. "One more thing you should know," he said, his voice lowered. "Every few years, some government types show up, check the lock on that bunker, and leave without speaking to anyone. Last time was maybe 3 years ago. Black SUV, men in suits. They don't stay long, but they always come." With that unsettling information, Roy departed, leaving Olivia to contemplate the mysterious underground structure and what its presence might mean for her family's future on the property. That evening, as they prepared to return to their apartment, Olivia noticed something she'd missed during their initial exploration. A small metal box had been mounted beside the bunker's entrance, partially hidden by overgrown vegetation. Inside was what appeared to be some kind of intercom system or keypad, though decades of exposure had rendered it unreadable. "Mom, can I try to fix it?" Tyler asked, his fascination with electronics immediately triggered. "Not now," Olivia replied. "We need to focus on making the house livable first. Whatever's down there has waited for decades. It can wait a little longer." Over the next week, Olivia orchestrated the beginnings of their move while coordinating with utility companies and contractors. Roy Hutchins proved invaluable, connecting her with reliable workers willing to accept payment plans or trade services for home-cooked meals. The house's electrical system needed work, but a sympathetic electrician agreed to restore power to essential areas first, allowing for partial occupancy while renovations continued elsewhere. 2 weeks after the auction, with electricity restored to part of the house and basic plumbing functioning, the Parker family officially moved in, camping in the living room and kitchen while contractors assessed other areas. The children had embraced the adventure with surprising enthusiasm, accepting the primitive conditions as an extended camping trip. Late one evening, after the children had fallen asleep on air mattresses in what would eventually be their bedrooms, Olivia sat at the kitchen table reviewing renovation estimates by lantern light. The numbers were daunting: tens of thousands for necessary repairs, with cosmetic renovations a distant dream. As she contemplated their financial predicament, a strange sound caught her attention, a low, mechanical hum emanating from somewhere outside the house. Olivia froze, listening intently. The sound continued, a steady electrical whirring that seemed to be coming from the direction of the concrete bunker. Armed with a flashlight and her cell phone, Olivia stepped outside into the cool desert night. The sound grew more distinct as she approached the bunker, definitely coming from within or beneath the structure. When she placed her hand against the concrete wall, she could feel a subtle vibration. "That's impossible," she whispered to herself. "There's no power connected to this building." The intercom box she'd noticed earlier now showed a faint red light that hadn't been there before. Something inside the sealed bunker had activated, despite being abandoned for over 40 years. Olivia circled the structure, shining her flashlight along its perimeter, searching for any sign of disturbance or entry. Finding nothing, she returned to the heavy metal door and examined the padlock more carefully. It looked exactly the same as before, no signs of tampering. She was about to return to the house when her flashlight beam caught something unusual, a thin seam in the earth about 10 feet from the bunker entrance. Brushing away loose dirt revealed what appeared to be the edge of another metal door, this one built horizontally into the ground and covered with a layer of soil and desert vegetation. A second entrance, Olivia realized, her heart racing with both excitement and apprehension. Carefully clearing away more dirt and rocks, she exposed a flat metal hatch about 4 feet square. Unlike the main entrance, this access point had no visible lock, just a recessed handle designed to pull the hatch upward. The metal was surprisingly clean beneath the soil covering, as though it had been maintained or replaced much more recently than the bunker's primary door. Olivia hesitated, her common sense warning against opening an unknown underground structure in the middle of the night. Yet the mysterious activation of whatever systems lay below had triggered her curiosity beyond caution. With a deep breath, she grasped the handle and pulled. To her surprise, the hatch lifted easily, swinging upward on well-oiled hinges to reveal a dark shaft with metal rungs embedded in one wall, descending into darkness. The mechanical hum was louder now, accompanied by the faint glow of emergency lighting far below. Cool, dry air flowed from the opening, carrying a hint of ozone and machinery, not the musty dampness she would have expected from an abandoned underground space. "Hello?" Olivia called down the shaft, her voice echoing. No response came except the continued mechanical humming. Common sense finally reasserted itself. She was a single mother alone in the middle of the night, contemplating climbing down into an unknown government facility that had mysteriously activated after decades of abandonment. Whatever lay below could wait until daylight, when she could approach it with proper caution and preparation. Olivia carefully lowered the hatch back into place and covered it with soil again, making a mental note of its exact location. As she walked back to the house, her mind raced with possibilities. What was hidden beneath her property? Why had it suddenly activated after all these years? And perhaps most importantly, could whatever lay below somehow help her family's desperate financial situation? She fell asleep that night, dreaming of Cold War secrets and underground treasures, unaware that the activation of the bunker's systems had triggered a silent alert in a government office thousands of miles away, an alert that would soon bring unwanted attention to the remote ranch she had purchased as her family's last hope. What Olivia Parker couldn't know was that her impulsive $750 bid at a property auction had just connected her to one of the government's most closely guarded Cold War secrets, a secret that powerful people would prefer to keep buried beneath the desert sand of what was now her family's new home. The morning sun had barely crested the distant mountains when Olivia woke with a start, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. The events of the previous night came rushing back, the mysterious humming, the hidden hatch, the strange emergency lights glowing in the depths beneath her property. Had she dreamed it all? She slipped quietly from her air mattress, careful not to wake the children who were still sleeping soundly after their first night in their new home. Stepping outside, Olivia shivered in the cool desert morning as she made her way toward the concrete bunker. The mechanical humming had stopped, and when she reached the spot where she'd uncovered the hidden hatch, everything appeared undisturbed, exactly as she had left it. "Maybe I did imagine it," she murmured, brushing away the thin layer of soil that concealed the metal door. But as the hatch came into view, she knew it had been no dream. The reality of an abandoned government facility beneath her property was both thrilling and terrifying. "Mom?" Zoe's voice called from the direction of the house. "What are you doing out here so early?" Olivia quickly kicked dirt back over the hatch before turning to face her daughter. "Just checking the property in the daylight, making plans." Zoe approached, wrapping a blanket tighter around her shoulders against the morning chill. At 12, she was at that perceptive age where little escaped her notice. "You found something, didn't you?" she asked, looking toward the concrete bunker. Olivia hesitated. She had always been honest with her children, even through the hardest days after Michael's death, believing they deserved truth rather than comforting lies. But this discovery felt different, potentially dangerous in ways she didn't fully understand. "I think there might be some kind of underground facility here," she admitted finally. "Something the government built during the Cold War." Zoe's eyes widened. "Like a bomb shelter? That's so cool." "Maybe," Olivia hedged. "But until we know more, I don't want you, Tyler, or Abby anywhere near that concrete building or this area. Understand? This is absolutely off limits." The seriousness in her mother's tone made Zoe nod solemnly. "I'll help keep them away. But are you going to explore it?" It was the question Olivia had been asking herself all night. Common sense said to leave it alone, to call the county, report the discovery, and let officials handle whatever lay beneath her property. But intuition told her that once government authorities became involved, she might lose control of the situation entirely, and possibly any potential benefit that might help her family's desperate circumstances. "I'm going to learn more first," she decided aloud, "before involving anyone official." After breakfast, while the children began the task of cleaning out the main bedroom, Olivia drove into Pinewood Valley to meet with a contractor Roy had recommended. Harold Guzman, a retired Air Force veteran who specialized in renovating old properties, agreed to assess the ranch house that afternoon. While in town, Olivia visited the public library, hoping to research more about the property's history and the government's involvement there in the 1960s. The librarian, an energetic woman in her 60s named Margaret Winters, perked up immediately at the mention of the Patterson Ranch. "Oh my, that's quite the conversation starter around here," Margaret said, leading Olivia to a section containing local history materials. "There are all sorts of rumors about what went on out there during the Cold War." She pulled out a bound collection of newspaper articles and placed it on the table. "These might help. They're not digitized yet, but I've indexed them by property and family names." Olivia spent the next hour poring over yellowed newspaper clippings from the 1960s. Most were maddeningly vague, referring only to government acquisition of the easternmost portion of the Patterson property for communications purposes essential to national security. A few mentioned construction activities and specialized equipment installation, but provided no specific details about the facility's purpose. One article from 1968, however, stood out. It described a visit by high-ranking military officials from the Strategic Air Command to inspect progress on what it called Project Echo Chamber. The article included a grainy photograph showing men in Air Force uniforms standing beside Eleanor Patterson in front of the ranch house. In the background, partially visible, was the concrete structure that now stood on Olivia's property. "Project Echo Chamber," Olivia whispered, finally having a name to associate with the mysterious bunker. "Find something interesting?" Margaret asked, appearing at her shoulder. Olivia showed her the article. "Do you know anything about this Project Echo Chamber?" The librarian's expression grew more serious. Not officially, of course. It was all very hush-hush. But my late husband worked for the phone company back then, installing special lines out to that property. He wasn't allowed to talk about it, but he did mention once that whatever they built out there went deep, much deeper than any normal basement or bomb shelter. "How deep?" Olivia asked. "He said they were running telephone cables that could reach all the way to the center of the earth, if needed," Margaret replied. "I always thought he was exaggerating, but he never was one for tall tales." Margaret hesitated, then lowered her voice. "There's something else you should know if you're living out there now. Every few years, usually after a new administration takes office in Washington, men in government vehicles show up at that property. They never stay long, but locals have learned to keep their distance when those black SUVs appear." It was the second time Olivia had heard about mysterious government visitors, confirming Roy's account. Whatever lay beneath her property, it apparently remained of interest to someone in Washington, decades after its construction. As Olivia prepared to leave, Margaret handed her a business card. "My nephew Derek works at the university in the history department. He specializes in Cold War studies. If anyone might know more about your property's history, it would be him." When Olivia returned to the ranch, she found Harold Guzman's truck already parked in front. The contractor was walking the perimeter of the house, making notes on a clipboard. He greeted her with a firm handshake. "Roy wasn't exaggerating about the condition," he said, "but the bones are solid. These old ranch houses were built to last." Harold spent the next 2 hours conducting a thorough inspection, climbing into the attic space, checking the foundation, and testing structural elements. To Olivia's relief, his assessment was more positive than she'd feared. "You've got 3 main issues," he explained as they sat at a folding table in what would eventually be the dining room. "Roof needs partial replacement. About 30% of the electrical needs updating. And you've got some water damage in the west wall. But nothing that makes the place unlivable or structurally unsound." "What about the plumbing?" Olivia asked. "Actually, not bad. The pipes are old, but intact. Water well needs a new pump, but the line from the well to the house is functioning. You're lucky the place is so remote. Vandals usually strip abandoned houses of copper piping." When Harold provided a rough estimate for essential repairs, the number was still daunting, about $7,000, but far less than Olivia had feared. If she could find employment soon, it might actually be manageable with payment plans. As Harold prepared to leave, Olivia hesitated, then decided to ask about the concrete structure. "What can you tell me about that bunker behind the house?" Harold's expression changed subtly. He glanced around as if checking who might be listening, despite the fact that they were miles from any neighbors. "I was wondering if you'd ask about that," he said quietly. "I did some work for the previous owners, the bank, that is about 3 years ago. Just basic maintenance on the ranch house to keep it from deteriorating completely while they tried to sell it. Did you ever see inside the bunker?" Olivia asked. Harold shook his head. "No, that was made very clear. The concrete structure was off limits. But," he hesitated again, "I was here when the government people came for their inspection." "What government people?" "2 men and a woman, all in suits. They arrived in a black Suburban with government plates, went straight to the bunker, spent about 30 minutes inside, then left without saying a word to me beyond showing credentials that identified them as being from the Department of Energy." "The Department of Energy?" Olivia repeated, confused. "Not Defense or Homeland Security?" "That's what struck me as odd too," Harold confirmed. "Energy doesn't typically handle military installations. But then again, nothing about that bunker seems typical." After Harold left with a promise to return the next day with materials to begin the most critical repairs, Olivia found herself drawn once again to the mysterious structure. The children were occupied inside the house, giving her an opportunity to investigate further without worrying about their safety. This time, she came prepared with a small backpack containing a more powerful flashlight, work gloves, a canteen of water, and her cell phone, though she suspected reception would be non-existent underground. She had also changed into sturdy jeans, a long-sleeved shirt, and hiking boots, unsure of what conditions she might encounter below. Olivia carefully uncovered the hidden hatch and lifted it open, revealing the metal ladder descending into darkness. The emergency lights she'd glimpsed the night before were no longer visible, but the same mechanical hum had resumed, suggesting systems were still active somewhere below. With a deep breath, she swung her legs into the opening and began to climb down, the beam of her flashlight illuminating rough concrete walls surrounding the metal ladder. The shaft descended about 20 feet before opening into a small chamber with a solid metal door. Next to the door was an ancient-looking intercom system and what appeared to be a keypad. Technology that would have been cutting-edge in the 1960s, but now seemed like a museum piece. The keypad glowed with faint green illumination, apparently still powered by whatever energy source had activated the night before. Olivia studied it uncertainly. Without a code, there was no way to access whatever lay beyond the metal door. Or was there? The intercom panel had a button labeled Emergency Override. With nothing to lose, Olivia pressed it. To her astonishment, a mechanical voice crackled from the speaker. "Emergency override requested. Voice authentication required." Olivia stared at the intercom in disbelief. After more than 40 years of abandonment, the system was still functional? "Hello?" she said tentatively. "Voice pattern not recognized," the mechanical voice responded. "Please state emergency override code." Olivia had no idea what code might work, but decided to try the project name she'd discovered in the newspaper article. Echo chamber, she said clearly. There was a pause then. Project designation recognized. Secondary authentication required. Please state date of initial project activation. Olivia frowned. She had no idea when the facility had been activated. But the newspaper article had mentioned the military official's visit in 1968, which might have been connected to the project's completion. June 1968, she guessed, remembering the article's date. Authentication failed, the mechanical voice responded. Final attempt available before security lockdown. Olivia thought frantically. If not 1968, what other significant date might be connected to facility? The article had mentioned the Strategic Air Command, which she vaguely recalled was related to America's nuclear deterrent forces during the Cold War. What major Cold War events had occurred around that time? The Cuban Missile Crisis had been earlier, in 1962. The Vietnam War was ongoing. What else? Then it hit her. 1967 was when Eleanor Patterson had sold part of the property to the government. According to the records she'd found, October 1967. She tried, choosing the month arbitrarily. After a tense moment, there was a series of mechanical clicks from within the door mechanism. Partial authentication accepted. Limited access granted due to extended system dormancy. Full access requires command-level authorization. With a hiss of pneumatic pistons, the heavy metal door swung slowly inward, revealing a dimly lit corridor. Beyond, emergency lighting had activated along the ceiling, casting an eerie blue glow that barely illuminated the passage ahead. Olivia hesitated at the threshold. She had actually gained access to whatever secret facility lay beneath her property, a facility that apparently still had functioning power systems after decades of abandonment. Common sense urged caution, but curiosity pulled her forward. The corridor extended about 30 feet before opening into a larger space. As Olivia advanced cautiously, her flashlight beam revealed walls lined with what appeared to be vintage computer equipment, massive metal cabinets with tape reels, control panels covered in switches and dials, and screens that looked like something from an early NASA mission control room. Most of the equipment remained dark, but a few status lights blinked sporadically, and the persistent mechanical hum was louder here. Whatever power source the facility was still functioning at, some minimal level, keeping certain systems operational despite decades of neglect. The main room was circular, about 40 feet in diameter, with the vintage computing equipment arranged around its perimeter. In the center stood a raised platform containing what appeared to be a command console with multiple screens and communication equipment. Above this central station, a large circular map of the United States was mounted on the ceiling, with numerous small lights embedded within it, most dark, but a few still glowing faintly. "What is this place?" Olivia whispered, her voice echoing slightly in the cavernous space. As if in response to her question, one of the screens on the central console flickered to life, displaying a text message in green monospace font. Echo chamber facility limited emergency power, 42%. Capacity main systems, standby mode security. Protocols, partially compromised awaiting command authorization. Olivia approached the console cautiously. Among the various buttons and switches was a keyboard that appeared more modern than the surrounding equipment, perhaps installed during some later upgrade. On impulse, she typed, "What is echo chamber?" The screen flickered, then displayed. Information restricted. Command authorization required. Security classification, top secret, majestic. Olivia tried again. Display facility overview. This time, the system responded. Echo chamber, hardened communications relay facility. Primary function, emergency broadcast system. Node 12. Secondary function, continuity of government operations. Tertiary function, data redacted, constructed. 1967 1968, operational status. Standby mode since November 14, 1987. The description confirmed what Olivia had begun to suspect. She had discovered some kind of Cold War emergency communications bunker designed to function during a national crisis, possibly even a nuclear attack. The continuity of government operations suggested it was part of the system designed to maintain governmental function during catastrophic events. But what had caused it to suddenly activate after decades of dormancy? And why was it still considered important enough for periodic government inspections? As Olivia contemplated these questions, she noticed a door on the far side of the circular room, partially ajar. Beyond it, another corridor stretched into darkness. Following the emergency lighting, she discovered a series of smaller rooms branching off the main hallway, what appeared to be living quarters with bunks, a small mess hall with a kitchenette, bathroom facilities, and a storage area still stocked with preserved rations dating back to the 1980s. Facility was essentially self-contained underground compound designed to support a small staff for extended periods during emergencies. But the most significant discovery came in the final room at the end of the corridor, what appeared to be a secure document storage area. Unlike the other rooms, this one had a modern-looking electronic lock on its door, suggesting it had been upgraded more recently than the rest of the facility. The lock required a keycard that Olivia obviously didn't possess, but the door hadn't completely closed, perhaps left ajar during the last government inspection. With some effort, Olivia managed to pull the heavy door open, wide enough to slip inside. Her flashlight revealed metal filing cabinets lining the walls and a central table with what appeared to be technical manuals. Most intriguing, however, was a modern laptop computer sitting on the table, connected to some kind of interface with the facility's older systems. The laptop was in sleep mode, but when Olivia pressed a key, the screen illuminated immediately, no password required. It had apparently been left logged in, perhaps by the government inspectors who assumed no one else would ever access this secure area. On the screen was an open file directory labeled Echo Chamber Documentation. Olivia clicked on it, revealing hundreds of documents ranging from technical specifications to operational protocols. Most were filled with incomprehensible technical jargon, but one file labeled Project Overview caught her attention. The document began with a historical summary that confirmed much of what she had already pieced together. Echo Chamber was established in 1967 as part of the emergency broadcast system, designed to maintain communications during nuclear attacks or other national emergencies. But as she continued reading, Olivia discovered that the facility's purpose had evolved over time. In the late 1970s, Echo Chamber had been repurposed as part of a classified program called Distant Voice, a system designed to monitor and, if necessary, control all telecommunications within a 500-mile radius during times of civil unrest or foreign attack. The technology had been considered revolutionary at the time, but also highly controversial within the government due to its potential for domestic surveillance. The document referenced capabilities for signal interception, broadcast override, and communications blackout implementation, terms that suggested the facility had been designed not just to maintain government communications during emergencies, but potentially to control civilian communications as well. Most disturbing, however, was a section describing the facility's tertiary function, previously redacted in the console's overview. Project Echo Chamber's tertiary capability, codename Whisper Lock, provides authorized personnel with emergency capacity to temporarily neutralize all electronic communications within the coverage zone, creating a complete communications blackout without requiring physical infrastructure damage. This capability was designed as a last resort measure to prevent enemy utilization of our communications infrastructure during hostile action. Olivia sat back, stunned by the implications. She had purchased property containing what amounted to a kill switch for telecommunications across a vast region, technology that could potentially shut down phone systems, internet, radio, and television broadcasts in an instant. No wonder. The government still conducted periodic inspections. Such technology, even if outdated by modern standards, would be catastrophic in the wrong hands. It might also explain why the Department of Energy was involved. The facility's massive power requirements would fall under their jurisdiction. As Olivia continued exploring the files, she discovered maintenance logs showing that while the facility had been officially decommissioned in 1987, certain core systems had been maintained and periodically upgraded through the early 2000s. Most recent log entry was dated just 3 years ago, confirming what both Roy and Harold had told her about government visits. Another file contained personnel records for the facility's original staff, 6 military operators and 2 civilian technicians who had worked in rotating shifts during the facility's active period. Most names meant nothing to Olivia, but one caught her eye immediately: technical specialist William Patterson. Patterson, Olivia whispered, as in the Patterson Ranch? According to the file, William Patterson had been recruited specifically because the facility was being built on his property, allowing him to maintain his cover as a rancher while actually serving as the facility's primary on-site technician. His wife Eleanor had been briefed only on the facility's primary function, not its more controversial capabilities. The discovery cast the property's history in an entirely new light. The Pattersons hadn't just sold their land to the government, they had been active participants in the secret project, with William Patterson actually working in the underground facility beneath his own ranch. As Olivia continued reading, a notification suddenly appeared on the laptop screen. Remote connection attempt detected. Security protocol activated. System lockdown initiated. The screen went blank, then displayed only a spinning progress icon. Simultaneously, Olivia heard a series of mechanical sounds from throughout the facility: doors closing, systems powering down, and most alarmingly, the heavy metal entrance door at the top of the access shaft beginning to close. Someone was remotely accessing the facility's systems, and apparently knew that an unauthorized person was inside. Olivia grabbed the laptop, disconnecting it from the interface, and raced back through the darkening corridors toward the entrance. The emergency lighting was failing, section by section, as the facility entered lockdown mode. By the time she reached the main circular room, only a few lights remained functional, casting long shadows across the vintage equipment. The metal door leading to the access shaft was nearly closed, with only about a foot of clearance remaining. Olivia dove through the narrowing gap, scraping her back on the metal edge, but managing to roll into the small chamber beyond. The ladder leading upward was still accessible, and she climbed it frantically, the laptop clutched awkwardly under one arm. Reaching the surface, Olivia emerged into the late afternoon sunlight, just as the hidden hatch began to close automatically. She scrambled clear, collapsing onto the desert soil as the metal door sealed itself with a definitive thud, once again appearing as nothing more than an unremarkable patch of ground when covered by loose soil. Breathing heavily, Olivia clutched the government laptop to her chest, mind racing with the implications of what she'd discovered. The bunker beneath her property contained technology designed for massive telecommunications control and disruption technology that someone was still monitoring remotely. And now she had essentially stolen classified documentation about that technology. As if to confirm her fears, a notification tone sounded from her phone, the first signal it had received since she entered the underground facility. A text message from an unknown number displayed on her screen. Return all removed materials to echo chamber immediately. Unauthorized possession of classified defense information is a federal offense under 18 U.S.C. Section 798. Representatives will arrive at your location within 24 hours. Olivia stared at the message in disbelief. Not only did someone know she had entered the facility, but they knew she had taken the laptop, and they knew how to contact her personally. Her phone hadn't even been able to get a signal underground, yet somehow they had tracked her actions. As the implication sank in, Olivia noticed a cloud of dust on the distant road leading to the property, a vehicle approaching at high speed. It seemed the representatives weren't waiting 24 hours after all. The impulsive $750 purchase that was supposed to save her family from homelessness had just entangled Olivia Parker in a web of government secrets, surveillance technology, and what appeared to be an imminent confrontation with federal agents. Whatever Cold War legacy lay buried beneath the Patterson Ranch, it was clearly still considered vital enough to prompt immediate action when disturbed. And Olivia, a desperate single mother just trying to provide for her children, now found herself in possession of classified information that powerful people were already moving to recover. Artifact: an abandoned underground bunker sealed for decades. Classified documents exposing government secrets from the Cold War. One desperate single mother's last ditch. $500 investment before losing everything she had left. This is the extraordinary, true story of how Olivia Parker's impulsive purchase of a dilapidated ranch revealed a hidden, military installation that would forever change her family's destiny and uncover a chapter of American history some powerful people wanted to remain buried. The morning sun had barely crested the distant mountains when Olivia woke with a start, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. The events of the previous night came rushing back, the mysterious humming, the hidden hatch, the strange emergency lights glowing in the depths beneath her property. Had she dreamed it all? She slipped quietly from her air mattress, careful not to wake the children who were still sleeping soundly after their first night in their new home. Stepping outside, Olivia shivered in the cool desert morning as she made her way toward the concrete bunker. The mechanical humming had stopped, and when she reached the spot where she'd uncovered the hidden hatch, everything appeared undisturbed, exactly as she had left it. "Maybe I did imagine it," she murmured, brushing away the thin layer of soil that concealed the metal door. But as the hatch came into view, she knew it had been no dream. The reality of an abandoned government facility beneath her property was both thrilling and terrifying. "Mom?" Zoe's voice called from the direction of the house. "What are you doing out here so early?" Olivia quickly kicked dirt back over the hatch before turning to face her daughter. "Just checking the property in the daylight. Making plans." Zoe approached, wrapping a blanket tight around her shoulders against the morning chill. At 12, she was at that perceptive age where little escaped her notice. "You found something, didn't you?" she asked, looking toward the concrete bunker. Olivia hesitated. She had always been honest with her children, even through the hardest days after Michael's death, believing they deserved truth rather than comforting lies. But this discovery felt different, potentially dangerous in ways she didn't fully understand. "I think there might be some kind of underground facility here," she admitted finally. "Something the government built during the Cold War." Zoe's eyes widened. "Like a bomb shelter? That's so cool." "Maybe," Olivia hedged. "But until we know more, I don't want you, Tyler, or Abby anywhere near that concrete building or this area. Understand, this is absolutely off limits." The seriousness in her mother's tone made Zoe nod solemnly. "I'll help keep them away. But are you going to explore it?" It was the question Olivia had been asking herself all night. Common sense said to leave it alone, to call the county, report the discovery, and let officials handle whatever lay beneath her property. But intuition told her that once government authorities became involved, she might lose control of the situation entirely and possibly any potential benefit that might help her family's desperate circumstances. "I'm going to learn more first," she decided aloud, before involving anyone official. After breakfast, while the children began the task of cleaning out the main bedroom, Olivia drove into Pinewood Valley to meet with a contractor Roy had recommended. Harold Guzman, a retired Air Force veteran who specialized in renovating old properties, agreed to assess the ranch house that afternoon. While in town, Olivia visited the public library, hoping to research more about the property's history and the government's involvement there in the 1960s. The librarian, an energetic woman in her 60s named Margaret Winters, perked up immediately at the mention of the Patterson Ranch. "Oh my, that's quite the conversation starter around here," Margaret said, leading Olivia to a section containing local history materials. "There are all sorts of rumors about what went on out there during the Cold War." She pulled out a bound collection of newspaper articles and placed it on the table. "These might help. They're not digitized yet, but I've indexed them by property and family names." Olivia spent the next hour poring over yellowed newspaper clippings from the 1960s. Most were maddeningly vague, referring only to government acquisition of the easternmost portion of the Patterson property for communications purposes essential to national security. A few mentioned construction activities and specialized equipment installation, but provided no specific details about the facility's purpose. One article from 1968, however, stood out. It described a visit by high-ranking military officials from the Strategic Air Command to inspect progress on what it called Project Echo Chamber. The article included a grainy photograph showing men in Air Force uniforms standing beside Eleanor Patterson in front of the ranch house. In the background, partially visible, was the concrete structure that now stood on Olivia's property. "Project Echo Chamber," Olivia whispered, finally having a name to associate with the mysterious bunker. "Find something interesting?" Margaret asked, appearing at her shoulder. Olivia showed her the article. "Do you know anything about this project?" "Echo Chamber?" The librarian's expression grew more serious. "Not officially, of course. It was all very hush-hush." The isolation and rejection Olivia had felt during their apartment days had been replaced by a sense of belonging and mutual support. One evening, as summer's heat gave way to cooler autumn temperatures, Olivia sat on the newly repaired front porch watching the sunset paint the desert landscape in spectacular oranges and purples. Roy Hutchins had stopped by with fresh apples from his orchard and stayed to help Tyler build a simple treehouse in one of the property's few large trees. "You've come a long way from that first day," Roy observed, joining her on the porch with a cup of coffee. "When I saw you standing there looking at this run-down place with those kids, I wondered if you knew what you were getting into." Olivia laughed softly. "I had absolutely no idea. I was desperate and terrified, investing our last dollars in what seemed like a crazy gamble. Sometimes the biggest risks bring the greatest rewards," Roy mused. "Though I doubt anyone could have predicted an underground Cold War bunker being part of the bargain." The concrete structure was visible from the porch, still appearing abandoned and unremarkable. Only Olivia and a handful of others knew that beneath that ordinary exterior lay a facility now documented as a historically significant example of Cold War technology, with Olivia serving as its official civilian custodian. "It's strange, too. Think how close we came to homelessness," Olivia reflected. "If I hadn't taken that risk at the auction, if we hadn't discovered the bunker, if the government hadn't recognized the unique situation and responded reasonably, any one of those things could have gone differently." "That's life," Roy nodded sagely. "Full of turning points we only recognize in hindsight. The trick is to keep moving forward, especially when the path looks darkest." As twilight deepened into evening, Olivia called the children in for dinner. Looking at their faces happier and more relaxed than they had been in years, she felt a profound sense of gratitude for the improbable chain of events that had led them here. "We'd like you to share your journey in your own words," the interviewer explained, "beginning with your decision to purchase the property at auction." Olivia took a deep breath, reflecting on how to encapsulate the extraordinary series of events that had transformed their lives. As the cameras rolled, she began. Simply, 6 months ago, I was a desperate single mother with 3 children, facing eviction with nowhere to go. Our savings had dwindled to just over $1,000 after 2 years of struggling to find stable employment following my husband's death. She described the auction, the impulsive bid on a property she had never entered, and the terrifying moment of commitment when she wrote the check for $750, nearly everything she had left in the world. It wasn't a calculated investment strategy, Olivia admitted with a wry smile. It was a mother's desperate attempt to provide shelter for her children when all other options had disappeared. The interview continued as Olivia recounted their first days on the property, the challenges of making the dilapidated house minimally habitable, and the community support that had emerged unexpectedly from neighbors like Roy Hutchins. Then came the discovery of the bunker, the interviewer prompted. Olivia described the mysterious humming in the night, finding the hidden hatch, and her initial exploration of the underground facility. She explained her decision to investigate personally rather than immediately reporting it, a choice driven by both curiosity and the protective instinct of a mother who couldn't risk losing their only housing option. When the government representatives arrived, I was terrified they would force us to leave, she recalled. Instead, they recognized the unique circumstances and worked toward a solution that respected both national security concerns and our family's desperate situation. The most powerful moment came when Olivia reflected on the larger meaning of their journey. In the main house, now designated as both the curator's residence and the site's visitor center, photographs documented the property's transformation from abandoned ranch to National Historic Site. Most compelling were the before and after images showing the dramatic renovation of the house itself from a dilapidated structure with broken windows and a sagging roof to a beautifully restored historical home that honored its past while serving the present needs of the Parker family. As evening approached and the guests departed, Olivia found herself once again on the back deck with Roy, watching her children play in the yard that had become their sanctuary. I keep thinking about that moment at the auction, she mused. How terrified I was to raise my number, knowing I was betting everything we had left on a property I'd barely seen from a distance. Sometimes the biggest risks bring the greatest rewards, Roy replied, echoing the wisdom he had shared throughout their journey. But it wasn't just luck, Olivia. It was how you handled each challenge with intelligence, grace, and always putting those kids first. Olivia nodded, reflecting on the complex chain of events that had led to this moment. I made so many mistakes along the way. That's not what people will remember, Roy assured her. They'll remember the single mother who turned a desperate last chance into a national treasure and built a new life for her family in the process. As darkness fell over Patterson Ranch, lights automatically illuminated the pathway to the bunker entrance, no longer a mysterious concrete structure hidden by overgrowth, but a properly identified historical site with educational signage and security appropriate to its significance. The hidden hatch that Olivia had discovered during those first frightening days remained invisible to casual observation, but now operated with proper authorization protocols, allowing scheduled access for historical tours while maintaining security. What had once activated mysteriously in the night was now carefully managed as part of a preserved historical technology system. Inside the house, Olivia helped her children prepare for bed-in rooms that had been thoughtfully renovated to balance historical accuracy with comfortable modern living. Zoe's space reflected her emerging teenage identity with personal touches that expressed her creative interests. Tyler's room had been designed to accommodate his growing collection of historical books and Cold War memorabilia, much of it gifted by the researchers who had recognized his genuine fascination with the period. Little Abby's room was a cheerful celebration of childhood, with space for imagination and play that had been impossible in their cramped apartment days. After tucking the younger children into bed, Olivia found Zoe sitting at her desk, writing in a journal. "What are you working on?" she asked, sitting on the edge of her daughter's bed. Just thinking about everything that's happened, Zoe replied. For school, we're supposed to write about a turning point in our lives. I have too many to choose. For now, Olivia smiled, recognizing the truth in her daughter's observation. Which one are you focusing on? The moment you decided to bid on this place, Zoe said thoughtfully. I remember watching you that morning before you left, looking at our bank account on your phone. You were so scared, Mom, but you did it anyway. The simple observation touched Olivia deeply. Her children had witnessed not just her struggles but her courage, perhaps the most valuable legacy she could provide them. Sometimes being brave doesn't mean not being afraid, she offered gently. It means doing what needs to be done despite the fear. Zoe nodded, adding a line to her journal. That's perfect. I'm using that. Later that night, as the house settled into peaceful silence, Olivia stood at her bedroom window, looking out over the property that had transformed from her last desperate option into the foundation of an entirely new life. The moonlight illuminated the desert landscape, casting silver light over the ranch that now represented not just a home, but a nationally recognized historical treasure. In the distance, the concrete entrance to Echo Chamber stood as a silent reminder of how unexpected discoveries could change everything. What had initially seemed a terrifying complication, a classified government facility beneath property she had purchased with her last dollars, had become the catalyst for opportunities beyond imagination. 6 months earlier, Olivia had been a desperate mother facing homelessness with 3 children and less than $1,300 to her name. Now she was a homeowner, a National Historic Site curator, and soon to be the host of a documentary series exploring America's overlooked historical treasures. The transformation went beyond financial stability or professional opportunity. It extended to a renewed sense of purpose, connection to a supportive community, and the profound knowledge that even the darkest circumstances could contain hidden possibilities waiting to be uncovered. As she prepared for sleep in a home that was now truly theirs, Olivia reflected on the extraordinary journey that had begun with a seemingly foolish $750 bid on an abandoned ranch property. That desperate gamble, the act of reaching for hope when all evidence suggested hopelessness, had become the foundation for rebuilding not just shelter for her family, but a meaningful future rich with purpose and possibility. The underground bunker with its Cold War secrets had indeed changed their lives, but the true transformation had come from within, from the courage to take risks when fear suggested retreat, the resilience to face each new challenge with determination, rather than defeat, and the willingness to reimagine what was possible, even when circumstances seemed most limiting. Patterson Ranch had begun as Olivia Parker's last desperate option before homelessness. It had become instead the solid foundation for a future brighter than anything she could have planned or predicted, a testament to the extraordinary possibilities that sometimes wait just beneath the surface of our most desperate moments, ready to be discovered by those brave enough to take the chance. Artifact, 6 months had transformed Patterson Ranch beyond recognition. The once dilapidated property now stood as a testament to resilience and rebirth, its renovations complete and its secrets carefully managed. Olivia Parker stood on the faggy, newly built back deck, watching the golden sunset paint the desert landscape in vibrant hues of orange and purple. The children played in the yard, their laughter a stark contrast to the fear and uncertainty that had dominated their lives just half a year earlier. Hard to believe it's the same place, Roy Hutchins remarked, joining her with a mug of coffee. The elderly rancher had become like family over the months, his wisdom and practical support helping guide them through their extraordinary journey. Sometimes I still expect to wake up back in that apartment, staring at eviction notices, Olivia admitted. It feels almost too good to be true. You earned every bit of it, Roy replied firmly. Not many would have handled the government situation with such grace and intelligence. Most would have panicked, made demands, or worse. The government situation, as they discreetly referred to it, had evolved in ways neither could have predicted. What began as a potential crisis, federal agents arriving to secure classified technology, had transformed into a unique partnership that benefited all parties involved. Under the formalized agreement, Olivia had received substantial compensation for the undisclosed government installation on her property, allowing her to complete essential renovations and establish financial stability. In exchange, she maintained her role as civilian site liaison, coordinating periodic inspections and ensuring the security of the echo chamber facility. Most significantly, Dr. Carolyn Hayes's historical documentation project had expanded dramatically. After high-level interest in the perfectly preserved Cold War technology, Echo Chamber had been officially designated a historical technology preservation site, with Olivia serving as its primary curator under government contract, a position that utilized her communications background while providing income that had transformed their precarious finances. "Mom," Tyler called from the yard, interrupting her reflections. "Dr. Hayes is coming up the road." Olivia smiled at her son's excitement. The 9-year-old had developed a fascination with Cold War history, soaking up information from the researchers who regularly visited the property. Dr. Hayes had noticed his interest and often brought age-appropriate historical materials to feed his curiosity. The government sedan pulled up to the house, but instead of just Dr. Hayes emerging, Olivia was surprised to see several additional vehicles following behind a small convoy that included what appeared to be a television news van. "What's all this?" Roy wondered aloud, setting down his coffee. Olivia shook her head, equally confused. The echo chamber project remained classified, with only a small team of approved researchers allowed access. Media presence on the property was unprecedented. Dr. Hayes approached the deck, her expression unusually animated. "Olivia, I have extraordinary news," she announced. "The declassification request has been approved at the highest levels. Echo Chamber is going public as a National Historic Site." "Going public?" Olivia repeated, struggling to process the implications. "But I thought the technology was still considered sensitive." "The core communications disruption capabilities remain classified," Dr. Hayes clarified. "But the historical significance of the facility itself has been deemed worthy of public recognition. It's the most intact example of Cold War communications infrastructure ever preserved." She handed Olivia an official-looking document bearing government seals. "This is the formal designation from the Department of Interior. Patterson Ranch is now officially Echo Chamber National Historic Site, with you as the designated resident curator." The news was overwhelming. What had begun as a desperate $750 investment in a dilapidated property had evolved into not just a home, but a nationally recognized historical landmark with Olivia as its official custodian. "There's more," Dr. Hayes continued, gesturing toward the media vehicles now parked near the house. "National Geographic is here to document the announcement. They're producing a special on Cold War infrastructure, and Echo Chamber will be the centerpiece." As if on cue, a team of producers and camera operators approached, led by a woman who introduced herself as the executive producer for the documentary series. "Miss Parker, your story is extraordinary," she explained enthusiastically. "A single mother investing her last savings in a property that turns out to contain a perfectly preserved Cold War installation. It's a filmmaker's dream, human interest and historical significance combined." The next hours passed in a blur of activity. Camera crews set up equipment, historians provided context interviews, and government representatives explained the significance of the declassification decision. Through it all, Olivia and her children watched with a mixture of bewilderment and excitement as their home became the focus of national attention. "We'd like to interview you about the discovery," the producer explained to Olivia. "Your perspective." as the property owner who unknowingly purchased a classified installation creates the human connection. Our viewers need to understand the historical significance. Olivia hesitated, glancing at her children who were watching the activity with wide-eyed fascination. Will this affect our privacy, our security? This is still our home. Dr. Hayes stepped in reassuringly. The designation includes strict protocols for public access. The main house and your private living areas remain exactly that, private. Only the bunker and surrounding historical structures will be accessible during designated tour times. And the compensation package is substantial, added a Department of Interior representative who had arrived with the convoy. As resident curator, you'll receive housing rights in perpetuity, along with a salary commensurate with similar positions at other National Historic Sites. The financial implications were significant. What had begun as supplementary income through her consulting role would now become a full-fledged career position with government benefit stability beyond anything Olivia could have imagined 6 months earlier. As evening approached and the media team prepared to resume filming the following day, Olivia gathered her children for a private family discussion. They sat together on the living room floor, the same space where they had once slept on air mattresses during those first desperate days. Things are going to change again, she explained gently. The bunker is being recognized as historically important, which means people will want to visit and learn about it. Like a museum? Tyler asked excitedly. Something like that, Olivia confirmed. But this is still our home, and we get to decide how much we want to be involved. Zoe, now 13 and increasingly mature in her perspectives, considered the situation thoughtfully. It's kind of amazing, isn't it? If you hadn't taken a chance on this place, none of this would have happened. We'd probably be crammed into Grandma's condo in Sacramento, Tyler added with a grimace, remembering the possibility they had narrowly avoided. Abby, at 6, had the simplest and perhaps most profound perspective. You fixed everything, Mommy, she said, climbing into Olivia's lap. You made us a happy home. Tears welled in Olivia's eyes as she held her youngest child close. The journey, from that desperate morning when she'd stared at their dwindling bank account to this moment of unprecedented opportunity, had been filled with fear, risk, and uncertainty. Yet somehow, each challenge had opened doors to possibilities she could never have anticipated. We fixed everything together, she corrected gently, and we're going to be just fine. The following morning, as camera crews captured the sunrise over the desert landscape surrounding Patterson Ranch, Olivia prepared for her formal interview. The producer had set up in the living room, now comfortably furnished and feeling truly like a home, with family photos displayed prominently on the walls. We'd like you to share your journey in your own words, the interviewer explained. Beginning with your decision to purchase the property at auction. Olivia took a deep breath, reflecting on how to encapsulate the extraordinary series of events that had transformed their lives. As the cameras rolled, she began simply. 6 months ago, I was a desperate single mother with 3 children, facing eviction with nowhere to go. Our savings had dwindled to just over $1,000 after 2 years of struggling to find stable employment following my husband's death. She described the auction, the impulsive bid on a property she had never entered, and the terrifying moment of commitment when she wrote the check for $750, nearly everything she had left in the world. It wasn't a calculated investment strategy, Olivia admitted with a wry smile. It was a mother's desperate attempt to provide shelter for her children when all other options had disappeared. The interview continued as Olivia recounted their first days on the property, the challenges of making the dilapidated house minimally habitable, and the community support that had emerged unexpectedly from neighbors like Roy Hutchins. Then came the discovery of the bunker, the interviewer prompted. Olivia described the mysterious humming in the night, finding the hidden hatch, and her initial exploration of the underground facility. She explained her decision to investigate personally, rather than immediately reporting it, a choice driven by both curiosity and the protective instinct of a mother who couldn't risk losing their only housing option. When the government representatives arrived, I was terrified they would force us to leave, she recalled. Instead, they recognized the unique circumstances and worked toward a solution that respected both national security concerns and our family's desperate situation. The most powerful moment came when Olivia reflected on the larger meaning of their journey. What began as our last desperate option revealed itself to be our greatest opportunity, she said, emotion evident in her voice. Not just for financial stability, but for purpose and connection. This property contained not only a historically significant Cold War installation, but a community that embraced us, professional opportunities I never would have found otherwise, and a chance to contribute to preserving an important piece of American history. After the formal interview concluded, the film crew moved to the bunker entrance, where Dr. Hayes provided historical context for the echo chamber facility. As cameras captured the concrete structure that had once been camouflaged as an ordinary ranch outbuilding, Olivia watched from a distance, still processing the extraordinary turns their lives had taken. Roy joined her, his weathered face crinkled in an approving smile. "You're a natural on camera," he observed. "Got that gift of making complicated things sound sensible." "I'm still trying to make sense of it myself," Olivia admitted. 6 months ago, I was fighting to keep us off the streets. Now I'm the curator of a national historic site with camera crews in my living room. Life's like that sometimes, Roy mused. Throws you curves you never see coming. The trick is to swing anyway, even when the pitch looks impossible. The media presence continued for several days, with the documentary team capturing footage of the underground facility. Interviews with historians and former government officials now cleared to discuss echo chambers' historical significance, and scenes of the Parker family's daily life on the property. Throughout the process, Olivia maintained boundaries that protected her children's privacy, while allowing them to participate in appropriate ways. Tyler enthusiastically shared his growing knowledge of Cold War history. Zoe helped demonstrate how the family had transformed the once derelict house into a home, and little Abby charmed everyone with her innocent perspectives on living above a secret underground place. As the project neared completion, the National Geographic producer approached Olivia with an additional opportunity. "Your story has resonated with our executive team in a way we didn't anticipate," she explained. "They're interested in developing a series focused on overlooked historical sites across America, with you as the host." Olivia stared in disbelief. "Me? I'm not a historian or a television personality." "But you are authentic, articulate, and relatable," the producer countered. "You bring the perfect combination of personal experience and genuine curiosity. We'd provide the historical experts for technical content, but your perspective as someone who discovered history literally beneath your feet brings a dimension that trained historians can't provide." The proposal was unexpected but intriguing. Olivia had enjoyed the communications aspects of her community college position and her historical documentation work. The idea of helping uncover and share other overlooked historical sites aligned perfectly with her newfound appreciation for preservation. "I would need flexibility for my family," she said cautiously. "My children remain my priority." "Of course," the producer assured her. "We're thinking 6 episodes per season, with research and filming scheduled around school calendars. The compensation would be substantial, and the exposure could lead to speaking engagements, book opportunities, and other professional developments." That evening, as the production team packed equipment for departure, Olivia sat with Roy and Dr. Hayes on the front porch, watching the desert sunset while the children played in the yard. "National Geographic wants me to host a historical documentary series," she said, still processing the offer. traveling to discover overlooked historical sites across the country. "You should do it," Dr. Hayes said without hesitation. "You have a natural ability to connect historical significance with human experience. That's rare and valuable." Roy nodded in agreement. "Plus, what better education for those kids than seeing America's hidden history firsthand? Book learning's important, but there's nothing like standing where history happened." Olivia watched her children playing happier and more secure than they had been since before Michael's death. The opportunity would mean significant changes again, but perhaps that was the lesson of their journey. Embracing change often revealed possibilities beyond imagination. "I think I will," she decided aloud. "It feels right somehow, using our experience to help preserve other forgotten pieces of history." The formal dedication ceremony for Echo Chamber National Historic Site took place 1 month later, exactly 6 months from the day Olivia had placed her desperate bid at the property auction. Government officials, historians, local community members, and media representatives gathered on the grounds of Patterson Ranch, now professionally landscaped, to accommodate limited public access while maintaining the historical integrity of the site. Olivia had been asked to deliver remarks as the resident curator. Standing at the podium with her children seated proudly in the front row, she surveyed the gathering, a tangible representation of the unexpected community that had formed around their seemingly hopeless situation. "6 months ago, I stood at a foreclosure auction with $1,247 to my name, nearly everything I had left after 2 years of struggle. Following my husband's death," she began, her voice steady and clear. "My children faced homelessness, and I faced the terrifying prospect of having failed them completely despite every effort to keep us afloat." She gestured toward the ranch house, now beautifully restored. "This property represented my last desperate gamble, a $750 investment that seemed more likely to sink us further than save us. I couldn't possibly have imagined that beneath this seemingly worthless land lay not just a fascinating piece of Cold War history, but the foundation for rebuilding our lives in ways I never thought possible." Olivia described the journey from desperate purchaser to historical curator, acknowledging the many people who had helped transform their circumstances: Roy and the local community members who offered practical support, the government representatives who recognized the unique situation and worked toward mutually beneficial solutions, and the historians who helped reveal the significance of what lay beneath the property. "Echo Chamber's historical importance extends beyond its technological innovations," she continued. "It represents how ordinary places can contain extraordinary significance just beneath the surface, much like ordinary lives can contain extraordinary potential waiting to be uncovered." She concluded with the perspective that had become her guiding philosophy through their remarkable journey. "The greatest lesson I've learned is that rock bottom sometimes isn't an ending, it's a foundation. When you've lost almost everything, you're in the perfect position to discover something new." My desperate bid on this abandoned ranch wasn't just a last resort. It was unknowingly the first step toward a future brighter than anything I could have planned or predicted. The audience rose in applause as Olivia's children joined her at the podium, their family unity a powerful visual representation of resilience and unexpected renewal. As cameras captured the moment for the evening news and the upcoming documentary, Olivia embraced her children, overwhelmed with gratitude for the extraordinary chain of events that had transformed their desperate circumstances into unprecedented opportunity. Following the ceremony, guests were given limited tours of the Echo Chamber facility, now carefully modified to protect still classified technologies while showcasing its historical significance. The underground bunker had been meticulously preserved, with original equipment maintained exactly as it had been found, creating a time capsule of Cold War communication technology. In the main house, now designated as both the curator's residence and the site's visitor center, photographs documented the property's transformation from abandoned ranch to National Historic Site. Most compelling were the before and after images showing the dramatic renovation of the house itself, from a dilapidated structure with broken windows and a sagging roof to a beautifully restored historical home that honored its past while serving the present needs of the Parker family. As evening approached and the guests departed, Olivia found herself once again on the back deck with Roy, watching her children play in the yard that had become their sanctuary. "I keep thinking about that moment at the auction," she mused. "How terrified I was to raise my number, knowing I was betting everything we had left on a property I'd barely seen from a distance. Sometimes the biggest risks bring the greatest rewards," Roy replied, echoing the wisdom he had shared throughout their journey. "But it wasn't just luck, Olivia. It was how you handled each challenge with intelligence, grace, and always putting those kids first." Olivia nodded, reflecting on the complex chain of events that had led to this moment. "I made so many mistakes along the way." "That's not what people will remember," Roy assured her. "They'll remember the single mother who turned a desperate last chance into a national treasure and built a new life for her family in the process." As darkness fell over Patterson Ranch, lights automatically illuminated the pathway to the bunker entrance. No longer a mysterious concrete structure hidden by overgrowth, but a properly identified historical site with educational signage and security appropriate to its significance. The hidden hatch that Olivia had discovered during those first frightening days remained invisible to casual observation, but now operated with proper authorization protocols, allowing scheduled access for historical tours while maintaining security. What had once activated mysteriously in the night was now carefully managed as part of a preserved historical technology system. Inside the house, Olivia helped her children prepare for bed-in rooms that had been thoughtfully renovated to balance historical accuracy with comfortable modern living. Zoe's space reflected her emerging teenage identity with personal touches that expressed her creative interests. Tyler's room had been designed to accommodate his growing collection of historical books and Cold War memorabilia, much of it gifted by the researchers who had recognized his genuine fascination with the period. Little Abby's room was a cheerful celebration of childhood, with space for imagination and play that had been impossible in their cramped apartment days. After tucking the younger children into bed, Olivia found Zoe sitting at her desk, writing in a journal. "What are you working on?" she asked, sitting on the edge of her daughter's bed. "Just thinking about everything that's happened," Zoe replied. "For school, we're supposed to write about a turning point in our lives. I have too many to choose from now." Olivia smiled, recognizing the truth in her daughter's observation. "Which one are you focusing on?" "The moment you decided to bid on this place," Zoe said thoughtfully. "I remember watching you that morning before you left, looking at our bank account on your phone. You were so scared, Mom, but you did it anyway." The simple observation touched Olivia deeply. Her children had witnessed not just her struggles, but her courage, perhaps the most valuable legacy she could provide them. "Sometimes being brave doesn't mean not being afraid," she offered gently. "It means doing what needs to be done despite the fear." Zoe nodded, adding a line to her journal. "That's perfect. I'm using that." Later that night, as the house settled into peaceful silence, Olivia stood at her bedroom window, looking out over the property that had transformed from her last desperate option into the foundation of an entirely new life. The moonlight illuminated the desert landscape, casting silver light over the ranch that now represented not just a home, but a nationally recognized historical treasure. In the distance, the concrete entrance to Echo Chamber stood as a silent reminder of how unexpected discoveries could change everything. What had initially seemed a terrifying complication, a classified government facility beneath property she had purchased with her last dollars, had become the catalyst for opportunities beyond imagination. 6 months earlier, Olivia had been a desperate mother facing homelessness with 3 children and less than $1,300 to her name. Now she was a homeowner, a National Historic Site curator, and soon to be the host of a documentary series exploring America's overlooked historical treasures. The transformation went beyond financial stability or professional opportunity. It extended to a renewed sense of purpose, connection to a supportive community, and the profound knowledge that even the darkest circumstances could contain hidden possibilities waiting to be uncovered. As she prepared for sleep in a home that was now truly theirs, Olivia reflected on the extraordinary journey that had begun with a seemingly foolish $750 bid on an abandoned ranch property. That desperate gamble, the act of reaching for hope when all evidence suggested hopelessness, had become the foundation for rebuilding not just shelter for her family, but a meaningful future rich with purpose and possibility. The underground bunker with its Cold War secrets had indeed changed their lives, but the true transformation had come from within, from the courage to take risks when fear suggested retreat, the resilience to face each new challenge with determination rather than defeat, and the willingness to reimagine what was possible even when circumstances seemed most limiting. Patterson Ranch had begun as Olivia Parker's last desperate option before homelessness. It had become instead the solid foundation for a future brighter than anything she could have planned or predicted, a testament to the extraordinary possibilities that sometimes wait just beneath the surface of our most desperate moments, ready to be discovered by those brave enough to take the chance. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.